Old Testament patriarchs regarded wine as a most valuable commodity. It's mentioned 230 times in the Bible. In Genesis 14, we read that, "And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God." Wine was often used as a blessing of great importance. When Isaac gave a blessing to Jacob, thinking that he was Esau, in Genesis 27 he said, "Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn and wine." We find that in Numbers 15, wine is mentioned as an acceptable offering before God. It says, "And for a drink offering thou shalt offer a third part of a hin of wine for a sweet savor unto the Lord." It was given as a promise. If God wanted to promise some group of people or a person something really grand, he would do it like he did in Deuteronomy 11, where he says that, "I will give you the rain of your land in his due season, the first rain and the latter rain, that thou may gather in thy corn and thy wine and thine oil." It was mentioned as something that was acceptable and even required as a tithe. In Deuteronomy 14, we find it said, "And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there, the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil." And as you know, the Lord did not want junk. He wanted the finest because it represented your appraisal of him. In the Lord's Supper, men at that day didn't know jack about chemistry. If 12 men were in a room and they all drank from the same bottle, and simultaneously they all felt better somehow, they would think that they were all partakers of the same spirit. And it's from that old usage of the word spirit that alcohol was later called alcoholic spirits, because people thought of there actually being a being in the bottle. But there is imagery there that can be put into good play when you think about it. In the Lord's Supper, Jesus even referring to the wine as being his blood, which means they were all partakers of his spirit. Making homemade wine is a very, very old art. The people of that day were proud of their wine, and it was also symbolic to them of their stability. In order to have wine, you've got to stay in one place for a period of time and be able to plant your little grape vines and give them a year or two or however long it takes for it to grow up and produce grapes. And then you've got to mash them and get the juice, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that, and then you've got to bottle it and you've got to let it age and whatnot. You couldn't do that when you were a nomad running around in the desert. You had to be settled, and so it was symbolic of stability. But it's an old art. It takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes perseverance. You can go to Google and type in homemade wine making, and you will find right now over 1.5 million sites dedicated to making homemade wine. There's a lot of people doing it, a lot of people interested in it. The making of wine is pretty elementary. It works like this. Yeast eats sugar. The sugar secretes alcohol and expels carbon dioxide. I'll give that to you again. The yeast eats sugar in the juice, secretes alcohol, and expels carbon dioxide. And it can be made from simple thing like frozen concentrated grape juice. Let me show you this. This is a 1 gallon container, and this little jug has been working real hard now for a week. I don't know if you can see it, but there was foam up to here the first 4 or 5 days. The yeast was really eating. It was really getting with it. Now there's just a little thin foam layer. That means it's got about 1 more week before it's drinkable. This thing on top is called an airlock. It just has a little loop in there that has water, and that prevents oxygen in the final stage from getting into the wine, but it lets the bubbles go out. I learned how to do it simply because I'm the age where I do those things that I can still do, and I can still pick up a gallon jug. Even though one may have no interest in making homemade wine or drinking it, there is value in knowing that even though some people abuse it and have really fouled up by the numbers, the beverage itself was considered a high, noble, and worthy gift, worthy of even giving to the Lord as a tithe.